Number one, the fact that controversial that word is being used. Sophie Cunningham rally planned for WNBA game tonight. Some media personnel have considered skipping the game to avoid any hate speech. Now, supporting women now is hate speech. You freaking lunatics. Good morning. Any word from Kathy about tonight's Seattle Storm game where reportedly anti-trans protesters plan to show their support for Indiana Fever's? The plot sounds pretty right, actually. There you go, the shit starter.
He frames the whole thing in one line. People are livid because a woman playing a women's sport came out and supported women, and now people who want to rally around her are the problem too. And whatever side of this you land on, that framing is where the entire fight actually lives. Because both sides are arguing about the label before they ever argue about the substance. One camp says pro-woman rally. The other says anti-trans rally. Same few dozen people, same parking lot, two completely different headlines. Here's what I keep coming back to. The rally already happened. It was Tuesday, and almost nothing anybody predicted about it turned out to be the story. Let's get into what they were actually afraid of.
There will be an anti-trans rally in Seattle tomorrow, ahead of the Storm game against the Fever. In support of Sophie Cunningham's latest public transphobic statements, I thought it was online fans only. That she's inciting. They love using that word, incite. Somebody, oh my goodness, inciting.
It's being called dangerous by media members. That's the word that did the work all week. Dangerous. And I want to hold that one up to the light, because we now know exactly how dangerous it was. A few dozen people showed up outside Climate Pledge Arena. There were counter-protesters. Nobody got hurt. The Storm's own head coach, Sonia Raman, said afterward the building worked with security and everybody felt welcome. And a spokesperson for the coalition organizing against the ballot measures said the atmosphere out there was largely peaceful. When the two opposing sides both come out and say it was fine, the dangerous framing didn't survive contact with a Tuesday night. But let's back up to what was actually announced.
Anti-trans protesters. You mean pro-women? Is that what you're trying to say? Got to be more damn careful. You mean pro-women? My understanding it's a pro-biological woman and girls rally. I thought feminists liked that sort of thing. Of course they don't.
Here's the announcement text. Alarmed by a Support Sophie rally organized by political groups. And that word, political, is doing something honest, actually. Because this wasn't purely a fan club. Reporting from ESPN and the AP afterward confirmed the crowd was also promoting two Washington state ballot initiatives. IL 26638, which would bar transgender students from girls' school athletics, and IL 26001, a Parents' Bill of Rights expansion. That matters, and I think both sides skipped past it. If you're pro-Sophie, pretending it was purely a cheer squad undersells it. If you're anti, pretending it was a hate mob oversells it. It was a political rally, organized by political groups, about a ballot measure. Call it what it was. Which brings us to what Cunningham actually said.
This is no anti-trans anything. I mean, wow. Someone wanted to have a meet. The haters are making it into something. Sophie's not involved, or the WNBA. It's interesting how you frame it as anti-trans instead of what it is, which is pro-women, pro-girl, pro-fairness. Damn. What's wrong with the freedom of speech and protest?
July 22nd, ESPN profile, female-only sports and locker rooms. That's the sentence that started all of it. And if you're going to react to this story, you'd better know the actual quote. She told ESPN she'd gotten feedback accusing her of hating trans people, and said she'd never once said that she's there to extend love, but that with love comes honesty, and she wants to protect young girls in a locker room and in sports. Then she was asked about it before the next game and doubled down, said she stands on what she said and thinks it's common sense. You can agree or disagree, but let's be precise. She made a claim about eligibility categories, not about anyone's worth as a person. Whether the media coverage reflected that distinction is the entire fight.
Has decided to come out and support women. And they're losing their minds. They're angry. And now other people wanting to support women in women's sports that want to celebrate and have a rally around the person that supports women in women's sports, they're angry about that.
It's amazing that that is controversial. And then he pivots to the WNBA, having the largest LGBTQ fanbase share of any league. He says it like it's a gotcha. I'd say it's the most important context in the story, and he's underselling it. This league was built by that fanbase. They bought tickets in 1999 when nobody else did. So when a rally lands in Seattle specifically, you're not walking into a neutral parking lot, you're walking into a room that a lot of people consider theirs, and the reaction was always going to be enormous. That doesn't make the rally illegitimate. It does explain why the temperature went to 1,000 in about 4 hours. And the temperature is where this goes next.
For Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham, who has faced a wave of criticism since a July 22nd ESPN profile in which she expressed support for female-only sports and locker rooms. Again, it is amazing that that is controversial.
Media members considering skipping the game to avoid hate speech or an escalation, and his answer is, supporting women is hate speech now? Look, the eye roll writes itself and I get why he goes there. But I'll give the reporters a partial defense they don't usually get. When a locker room story becomes a ballot initiative story, the people covering it stop being sports writers and start being political reporters overnight, and none of them signed up for that. Their fear didn't materialize. But the person who actually created an incident at that arena on Tuesday night wasn't a protester, wasn't a reporter, and wasn't anyone at the rally. Hold that thought.
Support Sophie Cunningham pre-fan rally. Join fellow fans to cheer for Sophie and celebrate women's sports. And that's controversial. These people are space cadets. Truly.
Anti-trans rally. Transphobic statements. Inciting. That's the vocabulary. And he's right. That incite is doing enormous lifting there. Incite what? Exactly. The event was announced publicly. It was permitted space. And it ended with people going into a basketball game. But here's where I'll push back on my own side of this. Anti-trans isn't a purely invented label either, because the rally was explicitly promoting a measure that would bar a specific group of kids from a specific activity. If your rally's cause is a ban, anti is a defensible adjective. The honest read is that both labels are accurate to different parts of the same event, and both sides picked the one that helped them. And speaking of framing,
yes, Kathy should say something about American citizens exercising their First Amendment right. You really nailed it on this one. On the head, Cindy. As long as those right don't resemble January 6th. Did you brought up January 6th. Whoa. Psychotic. Okay. How do you go from a pro-women's rally?
he reads the actual rally description, cheer for Sophie, celebrate women's sports, and asks how that's controversial. Fair question, and it's fair to point out that the language in the announcement really is that mild. Organizers said afterward they'd shown the world women can gather publicly and support female athletes. But the reason a mild flyer became a national story is that everybody involved understood it was never really about the flyer. It was about a ballot measure and a locker room policy fight that's been running for 3 years. Nobody who showed up thought they were going to a pep rally, which is exactly what the reporter's question to the commissioner was really getting at.
Good luck. Seattle is radically insane. Unbelievable. Cindy, you sound like a college freshman. Act like an adult that isn't perpetuating buying into online narratives. People have had enough of this shit. They're pushing.
An ESPN reporter asking whether Kathy Engelbert has anything to say about anti-trans protesters showing up for Sophie Cunningham. And I actually think that's a legitimate question to put to a commissioner. This is her league, her building, her Tuesday night. What I'd criticize is the same thing I criticize her for on everything else. She said nothing. No statement before. No statement about the rally after. Then when a discipline decision finally came down on Thursday, it wasn't aimed at a single protester. It landed on one of her own team owners. We'll get there. First, the label fight hits its peak.
It's being called dangerous by media members, woke WNBA media members, but media members nonetheless. Let's start here so you understand what exactly is going on. Number one, the fact that controversial, that word is being used. Sophie Cunningham rally planned for WNBA game tonight.
Anti-trans protesters. You mean pro-women? This is the crux, and I want to slow down here instead of just cheering. Both descriptions are load-bearing for the people using them, and neither one is a lie exactly. Pro-women is how the participants understand themselves, and I don't think you get to tell people they're lying about their own motives. Anti-trans is how the people affected by the ballot measure understand it, and I don't think you get to tell them the effect on them is imaginary either. What you can criticize, and this is the fair hit on the coverage, is a newsroom picking one framing and presenting it as neutral description rather than as one side's characterization. That's a real editorial choice. Now about the January 6th thing.
Again, it is amazing that is controversial. That's where we're at. That is where we're at. Unbelievable. The WNBA having the largest LGBTQ fan base percentage of any sports league will instantly make this a huge issue to...
Somebody brought up January 6th in a thread about a WNBA pregame rally, and yeah, that's a stretch and it deserved the reaction it got. A few dozen people with signs about a chromosome shirt outside an arena is not a comparison anyone should be reaching for, and reaching for it is exactly how you convince the other side you're not arguing in good faith. But I'll say the quiet part. The escalation ran both directions all week. One side reached for January 6. The other side spent the week calling reporters lunatics and space cadets. Neither of those is an argument. And then Tuesday happened, and gave everybody something real to actually argue about.
Brunson in Phoenix. In Arizona. 4 years with ESPN, but not now, are you? Good morning. Any word from Kathy about tonight's Seattle Storm game where reportedly anti-trans protesters plan to show their support for Indiana Fever's Sophie Cunningham?
He lands on it. Pro-women, pro-girl, pro-fairness, and what's wrong with freedom of speech and protesting? And here's my closing take. Because the story ended somewhere nobody predicted. Two teenagers walked into Climate Pledge Arena wearing XXXY athletics shirts that read, "Thank you Sophie for speaking up for girls." A Storm co-owner, Celeste Keaton, allegedly cursed at them and called them insane. The Storm apologized Wednesday. The WNBA fined her and suspended her from 5 home games on Thursday. So after a week of the league being warned that protesters were the danger, the only person the league actually disciplined was an owner for how she treated 2 kids with a sign. And Cunningham's own response to it was the calmest thing anybody said all week. That biological girls, biological boys, trans women and trans men are all welcome at her table, and you can disagree and still be kind. That's the story. Everybody spent 7 days bracing for the crowd, and the incident came from courtside.
How do you go from a pro-women's rally to bringing up January 6th? Oh, because I'm triggered by anything that might be right-leaning. I'm so confused about how this is a bad thing. Now women want to compete against boys and men. Question mark?